Hello, everyone. It's Friday. My name is Sonia, and my channel name is An Enthusiastic Reader, and I am here today to do a very brief Friday Reads. I finished 2 books since the last Friday Reads, which was, I think, 3 weeks ago. So that sounds like, hey, why aren't you reading more? I have been reading a lot, but I still am in process of 3 books that are long, and it's just taking me some time. So I thought I would just check in with you, talk about the 2 books I did finish, remind you what I'm reading, and I have a new channel recommendation. The first book I want to talk about is Plainsong by Haruf. This is a trilogy, the first in a trilogy of books about the small southeastern Colorado town of Holt. And it is set in a ranching community, a rural town. They are miles away philosophically and economically from the city, and they think of Denver as the big city. There is a few trips into Denver for one of the characters, but that is not what the book is about. The book is about a number of characters who all know each other in different ways in this small town in the 1980s. And so the first set of characters is a man named Guthrie, who's a school teacher at the high school, and he has 2 young sons and an estranged wife who is really struggling, and she is so unhappy in her life. She's utterly depressed. And so it is about her a little bit, but really it's about the father and the sons and how they cope with what happens when the mother decides to leave the family. Then there is a girl named Victoria who is a high school junior or senior, and she gets pregnant by someone, and her mother casts her out of the house. And so she is in peril and needs to be taken care of by someone else in the town. And then the story is about her teacher named Maggie Jones, who kind of takes her under her wing and helps her figure out how she's going to navigate becoming a young mother. And the other 2 characters are these elderly, probably in their 60s. I don't want to say elderly because 60s, that's not elderly, right? I think they're in their 60s. They are bachelor brothers who live on a ranch, and it's a cattle ranch. So there's a lot of the realities of cattle ranching and the visceral work of ranching and taking care of these animals. There's a lot of animals in this story that are just interesting because they're just such a part of the lifeblood of the community, these animals. So all of these characters are cast together and we find out what's going to happen. Now, I don't want to give away much plot because there's a lot of joy and tension in figuring out what's going to happen to the characters along the way. And if you think this sounds like just a nice, sweet family story, there is an element of that, but there's also a lot of very harsh things that happen to all the people in the town or all the people in our story. So I don't want to give those parts away, but what really makes this book special is the writing. Haruf was a master of simplistic language, but he's got so much emotion kind of tied up in what's happening in the plot of this story. And I had read this many, many years ago, and I had forgotten just about everything that happened in the story. So this was all, to me, like reading it again for the first time. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of a writing sample and see if this would entice you to want to read this book. I like this sample because it's a really long sentence, and and he pulls off the craft of being able to write short and long sentences that make sense and that evoke a sense of place. And so here we go. I'm going to read it off of my iPad. This is talking about the 2 boys, Ike and Bobby, who are the young boys whose mother has left the family. And they're kind of left on their own in a lot of ways to figure out how to process their grief of losing their mother in the home and then other things that happen to them along the way. So anyway, here we go. This is Bobby and Ike going out on their horse, and that's what this is about. Often in the mornings, they rode out along the tracks on Easter and took their lunch, and once rode as far as the little cemetery halfway to Norca, where there was a stand of cottonwood trees with their leaves washing and turning in the wind. And they ate a lunch there in the freckled shade of the trees and came back in the late afternoon with the sun sliding down behind them, making a single shadow of them and the horse together. the shadow out in front like a thin, dark, antic precursor of what they were about to become. Just listen to the musicality of this. They ate their lunch there in the freckled shade of the trees and came back in the late afternoon with the sun sliding down behind them, making a single shadow of them and the horse together, the shadow out in front like a thin, dark, antic precursor of what they were about to come. You hear all those S's and just the way that the words fit together. I mean, it's crafted. It's careful, but it's not overdone. It's not a gimmick. This is the way that so many of the scenes happen in the story, that you get a feel of the nature of the trees, the sun, the wind. The wind blows in this town all the time, and the wind is changing the way that the leaves move, or that the cattle stand because the wind bothers them, so they all have to turn around. So this is a rough book, and it's a beautiful book, and I can't wait to reread the next segment of this in April with Priscilla. We did it as a buddy read. I taped this before, and I mentioned that this is a buddy read with Priscilla from the Evening Reader, and we had a really nice conversation on Voxer about our progress in reading this book. So looking forward to the next one. The second book I finished is called The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, Lawhon. It came out in December, and it's historical fiction. This was for my book club. And it's unique because it's set in the 1780s, and it's about a midwife. And so she has a bunch of kids. She's in a very deeply loving relationship, a loving marriage. It's not a relationship, it's a marriage, to her husband. He owns a mill, and this is set in Maine, and so it's set in New England. And there is a murder mystery, so the murder mystery is there, but it's kind of there as a frame to show you what this community is like, and to show you how the society works and how the laws work and how the justice system can be corrupted. And some of the characters are like pure villains and some are not. And there's a lot of ambiguity, and there's a moral code that is kind of running everything. But what makes it really, really fun to read is just the voice of this midwife, who's just so interesting. Her name is Martha, and she is really skilled at what she does on helping women give birth in the community. And so anyway, I think if you have a book club, or if you just really like historical fiction, the color of this was really great. And I just zoomed through it. I think I read it in just 3 or 4 days because it was just really compelling story. So one of the best historical novels I've read in a long time. So that's what I have finished. I am more than halfway through The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. This is so good. I'm listening to the audiobook. What I want to say about the narrator, he's just so good at what he does, bringing all of these characters from all these different communities to life. There's a Jewish community, there is Black community, and then there are Hispanic musicians that come in and out. So he does accents so well. He speaks in Yiddish and in Spanish in different parts of the story, and you just really get a feel for the lifeblood of all of these different characters. And there are so many characters in this book, but I think James McBride really is handling it well. So you always know where you are, you know what communities you're talking about, and then you get to see all of the politics of a small town, the power structures, and also the ways people get around the power structures in the story. And I'm just loving it. So I'm kind of taking my time reading that. I am still working on the Best American Short Stories of 2023 as a buddy read with Teresa. And we are about 75% through. We had a couple of excellent stories this week. So that's coming along, and I should be done with that in a couple of weeks. And I'm also reading for a different book club, Sons and Daughters of Ease and Plenty by Ramona Ausubel. And she is a Colorado writer. I don't know if she was born here, but she lives in Boulder. And this is really interesting because it's almost a satire. It's kind of written in the same tone as like a Stephen Millhauser novel. So it almost feels fable-like, or it's elevated writing. The characters are extreme, and it's the story of old money versus new money in the 1970s, where a woman who is from an incredibly wealthy family, and they are old money, and she marries a man whose family owns a steel company, but they are considered new money. And then what happens when they run out of money? And it's like this, right in the first few pages, they find out that the old money family has just run out of money. And so then they have to figure out what they are going to do next. And I'm really enjoying the tone of it, and I will have more to say about it when I get finished, but I think it's really strong and I'm enjoying it a lot. So those are the books that I've read and I'm currently reading. I wanted to highlight a video that Daniel from Guilty Feet made yesterday about the death of Ellen Gilchrist. She was a Southern writer. She got started later in life and she died in January. And I had a whole bunch of short story collections by her and novels. So I was really in an Ellen Gilchrist phase a few years, not a few years ago, a few decades ago, in the 90s and early 2000s. I eventually petered out on reading them, but now I kind of want to revisit just in honor of her death, and then Daniel's really great video about it. So I'm going to leave a link to his video. I had a few people ask what I would start with, and if you are interested in reading Ellen Gilchrist, I would say read Victory Over Japan. It won the National Book Award when it came out. And, she's a very specific kind of writer, and I'm not sure that all of her content probably ages well into this decade. So I don't know how well her content aged, but I just really liked her vibe, and yeah, her characters are sometimes just really ridiculously melodramatic, and I just really was into those stories for a very long time. So sorry that she died, and that's worth checking out. There is a new booktuber that I want to highlight. She just started her channel in the last couple of weeks. Her name is Pat. And her channel is Book Chat with Pat, and she has a wonderful personality. She's funny, and she reads broadly, and she's really smart and funny, and so you should definitely check her out. And I think that's all I have to say for now. I know this is going to be a short Friday Reads, but I hope you're all doing well. Tell me what you're reading in the comment section below if you'd like to, or just say hi. Thanks to all my new subscribers again, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.